Call on Kahurangi Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today with a heavy heart to address an issue that has long been ignored, long overdue, and continues to fail the very people who deserve the most justice, the survivors of abuse in state and faith-based care. On Friday, the 9th of May, the government made an announcement regarding the redress system for survivors of abuse in state care. They allocated $774 million in the budget 2025 for abuse and care redress claims, a sum that survivors had hoped would bring them justice and healing. Unfortunately, this announcement is another letdown and deeply disappointing for survivors. I've been listening to survivors all weekend. They say they are angry, they say they are sad, and that they are strong. There's a class action that has been started around the government's announcement that shows survivors will continue to fight for justice. They shouldn't have to, but they will not stop. The government's response to the Royal Commission of Inquiry into Abuse and Care fails to address key recommendations. These recommendations were worked on for years by experts and survivors to ensure that the Crown is accountable for the abuse to children that occurred on its watch and to ensure that no children are ever abused in care again, something that happens every day in our country, every day. This government's key recommendations, including the creation of an independent survivor-led redress system, and continues to exclude faith-based institutions from the redress process. It's clear to everyone, except the government, that this is not what survivors were promised, nor is it what they deserve. The Prime Minister's words from his apology speech on November the 12th, 2024, he assured survivors that, quote, "It is our intention to have a new single redress system operating next year," end quote. The government's announcement is a continuation of the same broken system, one that failed survivors in the first place. There is no independent survivor-led redress system as promised. Survivors continue to be left in a system governed by the very people and institutions that cause them harm. Of the 138 recommendations made, 105 directly relate to the government. Of these, only 12 were fully accepted. And we're left with a redress process that still fails to include faith-based institutions that horrifically played a major role in the abuse survivors, children, endured. This is not progress, this is deeply unjust. $774 million is woefully insignificant. It fails to meet the scale of harm done to these survivors, these children, and is well below the international standards for compensation. It is tokenistic, it is disrespectful, and it is not enough to make up for the trauma and suffering that these survivors experienced and the generational trauma that continues today. In the words of Annabelle Ahuriri Driscoll, the co-chair of the Redress Design Group, quote, "The payments processed are still considered lower than other jurisdictions." Ihurangi Peters says the government's response is another broken promise by this government. Murray Helsley of the Network of Survivors of Faith-Based Abuse stated that faith-based survivors feel that they have not been listened to at all and are being thrown back on the tender mercies of the very institutions that abused them in the first place. Kevin Whiffen expressed that Friday's announcement was topping up an existing rotten process. Carl Tody, spokesperson for NZCAST, New Zealand's largest survivor-led Ropu, said, "We exist because the system that was supposed to protect us failed us, and it's still failing us. I call on the government to return to the table and listen to survivors, and I call on my fellow members of the House to stand with me today in ensuring that the government's response is not the final word on this matter."
I mean, of course I agree with her. Look at the hat that I'm wearing. I mean, yeah, she's pretty much said what I just said before. So, yeah, again, the new system needs to be an independent Crown entity. That's one of the recommendations, not a departmental public body. So that's very important. The current system is essentially a departmental public body. That's not good because it means that victims' claims are not being adequately addressed. So yes, I'm just going to quote the Royal Commission. "The problems with the existing redress processes are well documented. The solution, in our view, is establishing a new Puritumu Torewhanui scheme that is open to all survivors of abuse in state and faith-based care, including indirect state care," okay, very important key point there, "and is independent of the state, indirect state care providers and faith-based institutions." So that's not currently happening under the current system. So why does it need to be independent? Because it would avoid the need for survivors to approach the organisations they distrusted. That's really important, right? An interaction many found distressing or traumatising, and it would also eliminate inherent conflict of interest these organisations faced in investigating themselves. So, yeah, this, Kahurangi Carter, she's right. I can go over the stats of how much of an economic impact state abuse has had. The same stat that I keep posting time and time again, the average lifetime cost to the survivor of the loss of enjoyment of things that New Zealanders think are normal daily activities was estimated in 2019 to be about 673 million. Pardon me, I've got dyscalculia, folks. Sometimes I see the wrong amount of zeros. Almost 80% of the estimated lifetime costs of abuse per survivor, right, is 857,000.
Yeah.